Trackmania's most hilariously overpowered bug. 13 minutes long. It's actually quite short for his videos. Alright.
Yeah.
I mean, we told him so much. Like, I have now, before we start, I've asked myself if he really was able to put all the information in when it's only 13 minutes long, or 14 minutes. But let's see.
The 20-year-long history of Trackmania games, the developers have almost never placed restrictions on how the games should be played. Even though many maps are broken due to shortcuts, Nadeo have stayed out of it and allowed players the freedom to compete for world records through the use of bugs and glitches. But in April of 2014, a Trackmania player discovered a bug so powerful that Nadeo had to intervene. The bug could potentially break all the maps in Trackmania 2 and fundamentally change the way the game was played. That bug, as hilarious as it sounds, was to drive the car backwards.
This is the first track where I got that. Can show you later.
2.5 years after its release, Marius 89 has discovered that it's actually faster to drive backwards in Trackmania 2 Canyon. As seen in the footage, Marius 89 is demonstrating this by beating a world record on a newly released ESL tournament map. A very interesting discovery, to say the least.
On the 6th of April 2014, Germany were set to play a tournament match against North America in Trackmania 2 Canyon. The Germans, punctual as ever, showed up on time, but their opponents were late for the match. Bored and waiting for the opponents to show up, the player Marius89 started driving backwards for fun when he noticed that it was actually surprisingly fast. After their match concluded, Marius wanted to experiment more, so him and his teammates went on an online server to try it out. What he discovered is that for whatever reason, the acceleration when driving backwards was absurdly high. Eventually, you accelerate so much that the car becomes near impossible to control. At this point, any steering movement stronger than 10% will cause the car to slide out, either making you crash or lose all.
You can't say it that precise. Like 10% is just the estimate to tell you that you have to steer extremely little. That's not a mark like that it will always work. The faster you go, the less you have to steer before you slide out. And I think 10% at some speeds, yeah, but when you go faster, it's probably down to 3 or 4% already. You can't really say how many percent it is. But yeah, that's just a raw estimate that shall tell you you have to steer very, very bit.
All of your speed. Maintaining full grip through turns and jumps on technical canyon tracks required surgical precision. But Marius had a clever idea to make it a bit easier. By using a tool called DX Tweak, he could limit the steering range of his controller, so that if he moved the analog stick all the way to the side, it would only produce 25% steering. This gave him the benefit of having much more precision, with the disadvantage of never being able to steer more than 25%. But for backwards driving, that was exactly what he was after. That day, Marius89 beat a world record lap on a competitive canyon track by driving backwards. The reactions from the other players were mixed, finding it both amazing and terrifying at the same time, realizing the destruction this could cause. Backwards driving wasn't just a situational trick that would work on a handful of maps. This could fundamentally change how Trackmania 2 Canyon was played. Over the next days, Marius managed to break several other prestigious canyon records by driving backwards, but the time gains weren't exactly crazy. He always lost a lot of time turning around in the start, and often barely regained the lead again before the finish line. Marius wanted to know just how much faster backwards driving could be under ideal conditions, and started looking for the perfect map for a backwards speed one. A map where he could build up a ton of speed and preserve it for a long time, and one where he wouldn't lose time turning around in the start. And he found it in another game. This is arguably the best track for backwards driving, Valley A05. Since the layout of this track is a circle, you could just drive the entire track in reverse, and forgo the time loss of turning around in the start. and since the track limits are wide, you would be able to accumulate a ton of speed throughout all 3 laps of the race. How much time could backwards driving save on a track like this? Marius's run started innocuously, as he immediately had to climb up a big hill, not getting the chance to accelerate much in the first 10 seconds. Not long after, he crossed paths with the world record Ghost, which was already on its way to complete the first lap about 3 seconds ahead.
That's so
But
funny,
this
that
is also
replay.
where the compounding effect began, and the acceleration of the backwards driving truly kicked in. By the end of lap 2, Marius was well ahead of the record, and he had yet to drive his fastest lap on the track. At this velocity, any sudden steering movement will make the car slide out, but Marius managed to hold the precision. He kept full grip and accelerated all the way until the finish line, crossing it with a 47.81, over 6 seconds faster than the world record, which in Trackmania, where players compete for milliseconds, is a ridiculous margin.
Last week I reported about it being faster to drive backwards in Canyon, but it turns out it's also faster in Valley. As seen in this video made by Andrew, it seems to be just as effective as it is in Canyon. However, it looks like this backward driving will not last for long, as in the next Mania Planet update it apparently will be fixed.
Marius had proved how ridiculously overpowered backwards driving could be. The developers at Nadeo, who had previously stomached bugs being used to gain time, knew they had to do something. No racing game can be taken seriously if the most optimal strategy is to turn around and start driving backwards. In a forum post, Nadeo stated that the bug would be fixed with the release of Mania Planet 3 in the end of April 2014. But when the patch finally came out, it seemed like that was that. Nadeo had completely gutted the car's backwards acceleration, both in Canyon and in Valley. Not only did the car accelerate slower backwards, but once you reached 250 speed, it completely stopped accelerating further. You could at least still drive the car backwards, but trying to gain time with it was a lost cause. For a while after the patch, nothing more really happened. People had come to accept that the days of backwards driving being faster were over, and were now just another page in the Trackmania history books. 5 years would come and go until in 2019, something very interesting happened. Marius89 was again playing Trackmania 2 Valley on an online server, when he turned around the car on a jump and started driving backwards just for fun.
I was on a server, normal driving, then I thought in a jump, hey, let's turn the car 180. And I believe I landed then backwards, but I was still keeping the acceleration button, not brake. What I saw is that the speed that you have is absolutely stable, but once you steer, you gain speed.
On the jump, Marius noticed that his car would perfectly preserve the exact speed he landed with, since it no longer had any powerful backwards acceleration. But weirdly enough, as soon as he started steering, his speed increased. Marius would then go on to create a map with this as a premise. A map where if one turned around on a jump and drove backwards, it would be somewhat competitive against forwards drivers. It was a fun concept, but it didn't seem like this trick could be applied anywhere else. 1 year later, Nadeo announced their brand new Trackmania game, Trackmania 2020. The release date was set for the 1st of July 2020, and most players were rushing to complete their big projects in the older games before that. Marius had teamed up with the player Lars to build a massive map called Valley Parkour. The theme of the map was to feature every unique trick in Trackmania Valley that they could think of. One of those tricks being backwards driving. Lars and Marius wanted to create a checkpoint where backwards driving would be faster, as an homage to the absurd discovery all those years ago. What they noticed was the same pattern that Marius had come across 1 year earlier, that turning when driving backwards gained speed. They theorized that the reason for this is because in forwards gameplay, Nadeo made it so that acceleration decreases whenever you steer. But what the developers overlooked is that on the flip side, this then increases your acceleration if you steer when driving backwards. If you wiggled back and forth in a straight line, the car would build up a ridiculous amount of speed.
We're 400, man. It's so fast. What the fuck is happening? Holy shit.
It was immediately obvious to them that the wiggle trick was more than just a checkpoint on a trial map. It had the potential to break world records, and they had no time to waste. Lars immediately went back to where it all began, on Valley AO5, 6 years after the first backwards runs, and he started wiggling as much as he could. Incredibly enough, this trick had been hiding dormant ever since the update in 2014, and it took them 6 years to rediscover it. But that night, Lars obliterated the world record with a 50.41, 3 seconds faster than forwards driving. The community's reaction the following morning were again mixed. Some were dumbfounded at the absurdity of a wiggling backwards car destroying prized world records. The AO5 world record was broken several times, and for the first time, without the use of DX Tweak. The players La Martifice managed to do it on a joystick, without limiting the steering range of the device. Some days later, BO5, another multilap track, was also beaten by the backward strategy, by almost 12 seconds. Some parts of the community looked to Nadeo to take action, but Nadeo were working on the release of Trackmania 2020, and they weren't going to spend resources on fixing a 7-year-old game. One of the main arguments against driving backwards was that it would ruin the fairness of competition, that backwards driving is too far, and a potential threat for many other records, especially when you keep in mind that this is not doable for keyboard players whatsoever. I'm personally vouching for a fix and a deletion of all impacted records. Despite the call to action by the fairest competitor out there, Nadeo didn't end up patching anything, and they let the players figure it out amongst themselves. Most of the top players who stuck around in Valley came to an agreement to not use the backwards trick, as to not ruin further records. But since it existed within the game and was possible without third-party tools, and Nadeo wasn't going to patch it, it was just a matter of time before someone explored it further. In 2022, the player Crip discovered that more maps than ever could be broken backwards. Up until then, the maps that had been broken were driven entirely in reverse. This is mainly because players adjusted their steering range to 20% in DX Tweak. Therefore, they couldn't turn normally beforehand. Crip was able to get around this by playing the first half of his run on a keyboard. And then when he reached a part that could be faster backwards, he switched to a controller to do the smooth inputs required. In most racing games, steering wheel is the clear best option for an input device. But in Trackmania 2 Valley, with this laughably powerful bug, the most optimal setup is now to dual wield a run with a keyboard and a controller that can only achieve 20% steering. As it stands, 8 maps out of 65 in the Valley campaign have been broken backwards. And as ridiculous as it is, the expectation is that backwards driving will remain a part of the game now. But it's as that old saying goes. Sometimes you have to take 1 step backwards to go 2 steps forwards. And we might see even more world records with this in the future. If you enjoyed this video, then please subscribe to the channel as we are getting closer and closer to 1 million. Thank you so much to all the patrons for supporting my content, and until next time, have a good one.
And I stop at 1337. Yo, oh, I like the video. Actually, whenever I watch Wirtual videos, he talks so much about the basics. that it really goes into the video length. Yeah. But here comes really one information after the next. So, so it's really compact, that video, I have to say. So quite interesting. He also mentioned really a lot of things, I have to say. Just a few things. I mean, I can go through the video again and then tell you what I was thinking at that moment. But yeah, you might have realized, for example, that there was now no Canyon record being beaten in the end, now in 2022. In this video, it sounds like you could use backwards like everywhere easily and you just improve the record, but that's not the case. You need to find perfect maps for it. You need to find a way to turn the car around from forwards to backwards without losing too much time. You need then, of course, also the track length so that you can catch up with the backwards driving. Yeah. And the track itself also needs to follow some restrictions. In Valley, it does work in most of the cases. Only like the tracks where you have dirt parts with more tighter corners, you would not be able to really exploit it that well. But on the just road maps, it works. The question, however, in Canyon is, or the problem in Canyon is that you have maps with off-road sections, that you have bumpy road parts on the ground, and off-road will make your car slide out, bumps will make your car slide out, then you have jumps in Canyon, quite a lot, that are also not that beautiful for backwards driving. So you have several issues to find a good map, and there is still by now not a single Canyon track in the campaign from Nadeo where you could exploit backwards driving. So that is one thing that you have to keep in mind. And the other thing is that he says now that in usual racing games steering wheel is the best, but here it's a combination of keyboard and controller. Naja, I still think that steering wheel is the best for backwards driving, or even a setup where you use even more different controllers. But he did not really tell you in that moment when he shows here Lars run with the wiggling in the beginning of AO5 Valley.
Yeah, on Valley AO5, 6 years after the first backwards runs, and he started wiggling as much as he could.
So you see Lars is wiggling here. So now there is one issue. When we only use the gamepad and we use our DX tweak setting for the gamepad, then the issue here is that we can't steer a lot. We can only, like, what you have to know, the faster you are with a Canyon or the Valley car when driving backwards, the more the car steers with a steering angle X, like let's always have the same steering angle. The faster you are, the more the car will actually turn, the tighter it gets around. With a low speed here in the start, you barely turn anything. Yeah, so Lars has chosen a setup where he was just able to probably full steer the platform corners in the second lap and the first turn maybe in the last lap. But the last turn he was then probably already trying to smooth steer, even though he used the X-Tweak, as much as it was possible.
That's already was in the first lap.
Yeah,
like when we were first trying it out, I was doing it like that, but then I noticed it was too slow, so I had to
exactly.
change the DX tweak values
So
that you could wiggle more in the start.
Yeah, the issue is you get the most amount of speed when you are as close as possible to sliding out. So you always have to steer as much possible as you can without sliding out. And that means that the faster you go, the less you have to steer. But if we are now reaching here some high speed where you basically have no chance with a controller to keep your car without sliding out, to keep it balanced, when you don't have that chance anymore, and you have to use then, because of that, a DX tweak setting that only works for these last corners, that you can survive them, then you still have a really bad start because you just don't steer enough in the start because you are so far away from sliding out. And if you then, however, say, okay, I want to have a good start, I want to steer more there, well, then how do you want to survive the end? So that is now the idea why Wirtual is saying something with 2 devices. But I mean, keyboard for this start wiggles that Lars is doing here is not working.
Yeah, you're already sliding out in the
Yeah.
second chicane, basically.
Yeah, keyboard is not working here. The keyboard idea was just for maps where you have where you drive, and then you have a jump near the start where you can then turn around. And I was also using a keyboard in, is it this one here? No. He was showing here a run. Is it? No. I mean, it's coming from.
Full grip through turns and
One
jumps
thing
on
you can
technical
also say
canyon-
about that valley record, if you look there, with how much I'm steering, you get a sense when you notice that I'm full steering the whole start section. Especially if you look at that first right turn that I'm doing. You know, I'm completely full steering there. I mean, maybe you can show, I don't know.
I go through the whole video then see what else I wanted to say. In doubled speed. But yeah, he explained a lot of things quite good, but just a few things you can definitely explain a bit further so that you understand it better. Let's actually do the sound on what he said at several places.
2.5 years after his
Like,
release, Morris
it's kind of funny though to think about. At first, he wanted to make a video about the backwards in Valley Canyon, and at first he didn't even want to talk with us, or like not want to talk. He didn't know that we knew this much, you know.
Yeah, now this video is really a lot about us. And also our
It's-
valley parkour map
That's good.
is
Yeah.
shown. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Maybe you play your giant map later. Yeah,
Later.
I was thinking about that. It would be nice, but the giant map takes over half a day. Probably much longer because I also don't remember the.
Yeah, I think when
everything.
I finished it the first time, we were expecting it to go a lot faster, and then we almost missed the deadline. The author time was 4 hours 11 minutes then. But that's when knowing all the sweats and having hunted everything and being obviously good at the style. 4 hours 11 minutes.
So we
But
were.
that's,
I was actually searching on YouTube for these old videos by Frostbew. So Uli had a question where he asked who that Frostbew guy is. He was actually the biggest, the most known guy back in Trackmania, back in the days. He was one of the best esport drivers. He won ESWC 2008. He was in multiple finals, multiple competitions. He then had this battle with Karjen when Karjen basically got big, and he was always in the biggest, best teams that you have in Stadium. And Frostbuel was also one of the first streamers of the game and had a YouTube channel where he also posted a lot of videos with his records and so on, which was probably also one of the biggest YouTube channels for Trackmania back in the days. And he was then, when he was getting a bit older, then also starting to cast matches. And beside casting, he was also then at some point hosting an own tournament, the Stadium Esports League, SEL, that I also participated in. And he was at some point starting something very interesting. Each week he was bringing out a video on YouTube about what happened this week in Trackmania. Nowadays, that would be difficult because there is so much. Back in the days, it was not as much, but he still filled these videos. And I tried to find those videos, and it was difficult for me to find them for a long time. what was the reason? It wasn't on his channel. I think it was a different channel, and you had to know how it was pronounced. I found it actually by Googling, and then I found a playlist with the videos. And then I thought,
weren't they unlisted?
yeah, I thought that they were unlisted, but I think they aren't. But I thought at first that this was the reason.
As well.
Yeah, it took me a while to find it, but I remember that in these TM news, he was in 1 week telling, "Oh, Marius89 was finding out here that you can drive backwards," and then the next week he was then again coming up in the team news saying that it's also working in Valley. And those two clips you see here. It's interesting that Wirtual included a Riolu clip as well. I wonder if he asked him if Riolu allows him to use it.
I just checked, by the way. It was on Frostbeard's normal channel, but they were all unlisted, all of them.
Okay, then it was like that. Yeah. But you could find, over Googling, you could find the playlist. And yeah, nice that it was still possible to find them. And then there was also a video, like on YouTube. I can show you. There is it also on YouTube? There goes Trackmania. So here, Trackmania to Canyon, driving backwards is faster. This is the video that he also took some footage out when he showed the in-game chat. This is by Toffer. There's over 3K viewers. Was posted in the Mania Planet forum as well. There they started a discussion. Yo, Tomsky, thanks for the Prime sub. Thanks for the sub. Yeah, where was I? So there they started in the Mania Plan forum then the big discussion, what people think about it. Some people were of course fully against it. You will see, can I go higher? You see here Laurens, for example. I have to finish the run first. Laurens, you wake me up, please. Just wake me up out of this nightmare. Others, oh, awesome, Roffel. Yeah. Of course, there is a big issue for hunting campaign tracks or for abusing it on other tracks. Because you think, like, yeah, if you start using it and it would work on many tracks, then it really breaks the game. As Riolu then wrote in that one comment, keyboard players have then no chance, but even gamepad players have no chance. You have to use DX Tweak or you have to use steering wheel, otherwise you can't really do that, and that of course breaks completely the competition on those tracks. But in Canyon, it was not that easy. As he basically told you in the start, let's go back in the video again. So that's the wrong video. I was already wondering. The first tracks where I managed to get faster was on multi-lap tracks, so that I started backwards with speed already. So that were league maps basically, but I had to search for those maps. It was difficult to find normal maps with start to finish where it would be faster.
Mars9 has discovered that it's actually faster to drive backwards in Trackmania 2 Canyon. As seen in the footage, Mars9 is demonstrating this by...
Yeah, and this was here the video out, the track out of this video. And this is the first track where I managed to get it faster. And this is a multi-lap track.
A world record on a newly released ESL tournament map. A very interesting discovery, to say the least.
On the 6th of April 2014, Germany were set to play a tournament match against North America.
Yeah, and this is then the story that we told then Wirtual, how this all happened. We Germans were then on the server waiting for the match, and the Americans, they didn't come that early. So we had to wait, basically a whole hour, I think. They came just 1 hour later. Maybe there was something with, he said it was on the 6th of April. There was maybe the change from winter to summertime or something. So we had to wait. And at some point it was boring and I started to drive backwards, as he also mentioned. And I was super slow at the start, like the backwards driving was extremely slow. But once I then had some corners and started steering, I gained speed. and I did it without the X-Streak. But when I survived until the middle of the track, then it was impossible to survive really much further. But if I survived until there, I realized, oh god, my speed is really high. And I don't need to drift turns, it's all no slide. So that's the moment where I realized, like, can that be faster? But I was losing too much time at the start, so I told them the others, driving with cars on, I told them the others that they wait for me in the start until I gain some speed, and then we can compare. And then I realized, yeah, I was much faster in the middle of the track, had much more speed. And so after the match, we then had the idea, yeah, let's see, can I get a record with that? Of course, you are then curious if it's possible. And that one track there was the first multi-lap. I got it done on multiple other multi-lap tracks. There was a nice video about that, about my backwards runs that I got then, and I can show you that. I only need to plug in my external disk. Nein, Norton. So. I have here videos. Okay, wait. Is it also on this? Or is it somewhere else? Maybe it's on the other disk. No. This is something else. Other videos. I thought it was on this one. Let me take the other one. Oh. I indeed took the wrong one. They are all silver, and I didn't have the light on. Okay, so now videos, Trackmania, Mice 89, videos, and then is here Trackmania to Canyon, driving backwards is faster. No, wait, that was the video that we have here opened, but there's also a big video by Andriff. Driving backwards is faster. It's like called the same. Sorry, but why is that so loud? So, this is a big video with all the records that I got in the beginning. And this video you can't find in the internet anymore. That's why I had to search the external disks. So this is the comparison with the world record forwards driving on that first track where I have beaten it. So you see exactly where backwards is better and where it is worse. In the beginning it is good, but here you have a long drop and I have to wait then until I can really turn into the corner. And then you see also that the high speed that backwards reaches is not high. But, I mean, I didn't know that you could wiggle all the time. So on these straights I drove straight. And then my speed was of course kinda stalled. So I didn't know about that wiggling trick. That would have made me probably faster in that section as well. But then, this whole 270-degree corner, I could just no-slide. And I gain a lot of time also here. But the very last turn is a downhill turn. I need to take it completely outside. But I was beating it. Then we found another multi-lap track, where I play against Onyo. In the beginning, uphill and a lot of straight, so I'm a bit behind. Here also such a uphill corner that was not the best, but I'm still ahead already. But now comes the part where I gain a lot. Here I have to go for outside, but this is then a long turn where I can just no-slide steer. And here I gain tons of speed, especially here. The world record has to drift it, and I can just full speed no-slide. And I gain speed while steering, as we now know. But now comes the worst part of the track. I have to go full outside here, because the turn is too steep. Then we have multiple drops. Drop number 1, drop number 2, then a little off-road section where I have to go straight over, and then this turn where I have to go outside, and I beat the world record by literally 1000. And now we came to this track. This was the first track that I found where it was possible to beat the world record on the start to finish track. To make that happen, I needed to find a track where you have a jump in the start, where you can turn around the car. And this is exactly the track where I've been using a keyboard for the start to turn around and then landing and having the DX3 settings for the rest.
This was the first video you ever saw about backwards driving in Canyon. I mean, it was kind of the only video about it for a long time besides the Doppel video. I just finished the customer, I just wanted to say I'm happy.
Oh, nice.
It's cheese, but I have been on it for so long now, but I finally got it. Up to 5.
So you see how long I'm behind Onyo. This is the track that also Wirtual showed in the video, where he said for a long time it is slower. And that's also why I say you need also the track length to catch that up. But here you see now in those corners I overtake already. I'm also much faster through this corner. But here's a bit of a jump, yeah, but it's fine. At this point I stay ahead. And now this is the track where we found it all out. So this track usually starts forwards. It's a very known track, probably one of the most known league tracks in Trackmania 2 Canyon. This is the track where we've been waiting for our opponents to join the server. And we just turned around the start block now for this video. Just to show you that if I would have started backwards on that map, I would have beaten the world record. But it was just taking too much time to turn around. And you see, I barely get around these corners here in the start because I have that strong DX3 setting that I can't steer a lot. So I couldn't take a more stronger DX3 setting though, because I still have to go around the corners. And with keyboard backwards, you immediately drift, so keyboard is not really an option for that. But at this moment here, this long left turn, then here, this right turn, this wall right, just full speed no slide, this is where I gain a lot of time. Here I even had to release then, I was too fast for this corner. And this is against here the Melee winner. Against Pack, who was very active on this map pack back in the days. Yeah, and then during the week I figured out that it also works in Valley. And of course with AO5, which is still up to come in this video. And I also searched in Valley then for a normal start to finish track, and there I actually found a track that was a normal Nadeo track and normal campaign map where I could use it. So I also on this track here, I start with keyboard, turn around with keyboard, and then switch to gamepad with DX tweak settings. Against the record by Ryulu, very tight battle. The interesting thing now is that I found this track here in Valley to actually make it happen to beat a world record. So I chose this track, but nowadays, where we have multiple Valley tracks getting beaten by driving backwards, this map is not one of them. Here, this map has a forwards record nowadays, and it's probably not possible to beat it with backwards driving. But I myself found this track to actually prove it, that backwards driving is faster. That's the funny part about it. And yeah, you see my tapping here a little bit, then turning around, losing of course first a bit of time, but now come the few corners that I can no slide again. World record here partly actually has to slide or slow down a lot. This is not a good corner for me because I have to go so outside, but still here I can turn so much more than the world record. Like if you have a look at that, the world record needs to get around the corner, needs to actually slide in front of an uphill, and backwards the car steers so much stronger and gets around no slide. I even touched the wall, but I'm still staying ahead. And this is then the record that you've also seen in Wirtual's video. And you can be sure, if we would have known that you can wiggle, or that the turning actually is the part that makes you so much faster. If we would have realized that, and if I would have started wiggling with the old backwards physics, this would have been even faster. Because the first lap here is really slow. But you see already now what kind of speed that is, and it's also way too fast now. Like this last turn, I already have to release because I would crash into the multi-lap things there. And I fly so far into the corner, I also have to release because of that. So in the last lap the corner is quite difficult to get. Yeah, and that is basically a video that you sadly do not find on the internet anymore. Even on Trackmania Tube, TM Tube, it's not there anymore. Yeah. So yeah, Virtual always showed you some random clips. One thing that Virtual didn't mention is in the part where he said between what was fixed by Nadeo with backwards driving, no? He just told you it was fixed by the update, and nobody thought about it anymore. It is not completely true. The acceleration was extremely slow, but you still had acceleration and you were not capped at a certain speed. You could still get faster and faster and faster. That means if you were driving this valley map here that we used all the time to show it, a valley AO5. Yeah, not sure where it is now here. Here, this map. If you now drive many laps in a row on this track, then you actually get faster. It just took ages. But when you were on a server in time attack, then you would beat drivers that drive forwards. You just need 10 laps and then you have the speed. Of course, we know now you don't need that much time because you could wiggle, but even without wiggling, without the knowledge that wiggling makes you faster, with just going straight on straights, you were overall on this map gaining speed because the map had 2 corners, so you had to steer, and this is where you gained speed. And even though the acceleration was very slow, at some point you were faster than driving forwards. So there was a day before Trackmania Turbo got released where Ryulu, Lars, Ben, who's also an okay boy, or was an okay boy, who was also there, Maddox, Sticks for sure, Maddox probably not, but Sticks. We were driving on a server deep in the night, 4 a.m. or something, and we had then 2 tracks built by Ben that you find on Mania Exchange. Oops. That you find on Mania Exchange if you search for his maps. Ah no, one map was actually by Lars. I think one map was by Ben. How was he exactly? Probably is also Ben 3-4. Oh god, what was exactly 3-7? Lars, what was his number? Oh, let's just search for Ben 3-7. No? 3-4. Otherwise 3-5. I know the 4 numbers, just not the order, but probably 3-5. Or he's not called like that. Lars somehow not here.
I just came back.
Ah.
It's gone for 2 minutes. Something?
How is Ben called on MX?
3847.
3847, yeah, it's one of the numbers that I didn't try.
Are you searching for the map with them? Because, I mean, I uploaded mine as well. They called it Lars 2.
Yeah, that's where I also will go.
And he's
so
probably big backwards. Oh, it's not backwards, see?
Yeah, you see that he also did stadium backwards maps at some point. I remember that I hunted that as well. So these are other things. Here it's not. It must be then on the second page or something. Or I search for backwards. Just backwards NASCAR here. This. So you see on this thumbnail that there is basically the road that's just 4 90-degree corners and it's just multi-lap. And we were driving that. And also Lars, with his map Lars, had done a map where you have then 4 tunnels in mountains, also just 4 90-degree corners, and we were hunting that. And we were driving then on the server in time attack backwards. Or actually not everyone. Most of the others were driving forwards, but I was driving backwards. And we figured out, it's still better. After some laps, you are fast enough. You see here the Daddy Manias. Sticks, 15.7. Ryulu, 15.1. Lars, 15.07. I got 11.4. So I used then the X-Tweak settings and nailed the corners then after getting speed for 15 laps. That are also very crazy replays. But yeah. So we already knew you can still beat records, but not just on a normal track from start to finish, because it takes so long until you get speed. But now we know if we would have wiggled on the straights, we would have been fast. Yeah, I'm not sure if there is still something that we did not talk about. Here he explains, of course, the DX-Tweak. No? I like that he said Marius had a clever solution. I'm not sure if everyone would agree that using DX-Tweak is so clever. Of course, it was needed in that case. Otherwise, it was not possible. But yeah, you understand now, instead of that, the way that my stick travels from the center point to the full side, instead of that, this way here, certain centimeters of stick range, covers then the whole space from 0 to 100%. It only has to do this little bit. Like, that's also just an example from Wirtual here with a 25%. But it means now that if I, for example, steer half, then I have here, then I steer 12.5%. And I have, in these these 25% steering range, I have basically now my full stick range for that. Usually you'd only have a quarter of your stick range for this, which is then only a very little movement, but now I have my whole stick range for these 25%. And that's why it's then easier. And in the end, when you're fast with backwards driving, then you can just full steer. You can just full steer, but the car will not steer more than that, and so you don't slide out until you are too fast. At some speeds that doesn't help anymore, and then you need a more extreme deep streak setting, and that's where you only steer 10% maximum. But that's exactly the issue. Like when you drive backwards, you want to wiggle now in the beginning, but the first wiggles need to be probably with like 80 or 70% steering. No, then the third or fourth wiggle is then probably already at 50%. Like you need to adapt that. And that's why you kind of need two devices that, however, both must be able to drive like not keyboards, like analog. And or you have just something good like a joystick where you can be very precise. Joystick is also United, well used for the top players, and a steering wheel, of course, as well. With a steering wheel, you can also do it. And yeah, using the steering wheel was also an idea that I wanted to do at some point. We can try it out maybe now. If I can get some records here with my steering wheel. So, yeah, what do we have here? Here it shows AO5, which you also saw in the video. Then that Frostbuhl was actually talking about it. He was showing.
Overpowered backwards driving could be. The developers at Nadeo, who had previously stomached bugs being used to gain time, knew they had to do something. No racing game can be taken seriously if the most
Yeah. So, and then he was at some point saying this sudden finding out that, yeah, when there comes my interview, it's actually quite funny that he implemented it like that. But this is now a replay that he probably drove. For me, it was just on a random online server where I just had a long jump and I thought, let's turn the car by 180 and land backwards. And now I can tell you that in the old Trackmania game, Trackmania United, there is the desert environment. And the desert environment is similar. You can turn around the desert car in a jump 180, land backwards, but keep accelerating. And the car is not really losing speed. It's kind of keeping his speed. It has a deceleration, but very small. And you can go over anti-boosts for a long time without any issue like that. Yeah, and here what he now didn't say is when you then drive backwards with belly after a jump, the thing is probably that you have a forwards gear, but it probably doesn't even matter. It also didn't matter if you then keep pressing acceleration or if you actually would switch to braking. I think it doesn't matter really. I think if both cases the car is stabilizing the speed, and only when you steer, the car gets faster. And that might be then the idea that basically when you drive forwards, steering makes you slower. So if you drive backwards, it makes you faster. Very simple equation, kind of. And I had an idea, for example, he didn't show another checkpoint in our valley parkour map, where... Like here he shows that one checkpoint where you have to wiggle to get enough speed, but there's also another checkpoint on the valley parkour track where you have to go backwards and you need to get a certain speed with that, and because the speed is so stable, you can then make very tight and smooth jumps. Like the initial idea was really to implement a checkpoint in the map where you go into backwards driving and you have to turn as much the car that you exactly, like, you know, the speed is always the same when you then drive backwards, but only with turning you get faster. And that you have to hit a certain speed, like exactly 1 kilometer per hour, a very precise speed with the steering, so that you then can do multiple tight jumps. But we had a little issue with that, because only over 150 or something was, like, the speed you needed on this map was 151, and only over 100 it even stays stable, or over 150 stays stable. I think the problem is that we wanted to make this finishable for also keyboard drivers, and keyboard drivers can't wiggle, so we couldn't really implement it like that. But if you would now just do a khaki map in Valley or something, you could in theory create something like that, where you force people to drive backwards and wiggle in a way that they exactly hit that certain speed, so that multiple jumps are possible to get. That's also part of the map. And yeah, at some point he shows this nice picture of our track here. We would really hope that this map gets more recognition. It's really cool that it's in this video. I don't really think that people will play it because of that, though, because it's still Valley. But I had multiple tracks, 2 tracks in Trackmania United, Bay Parkour and Rally Parkour, where the idea was that I use every block and every part of the block in order to come from one checkpoint to the next. So what you basically have to do on platform, or then also when it's more difficult on trial maps, that you have to get from checkpoint to checkpoint. And I wanted to use every details of the blocks. And I came to that idea because I played hide and seek on a server in Trackmania earlier, where you basically have cars on and you drive away, and some guy is basically at the... You play with blue and red team, for example, and one guy is chasing. When he gets you, when he basically drives with his car through your car, then you just switch the team, and then you have to also catch the others. And on those tracks, when you were going away or driving away from the guy that tries to catch all the people, I try to reach places that he can't reach. So I try to climb on things and so on. And that's how I came to that Bay Parkour. So that's how I found many ideas. And then also for Rally Parkour. And then at some point I had the idea with Lars that we also do that in Valley. And luckily we waited a bit, because Valley got some updates here and there. But that also made it more difficult, though, because with the big update that Valley got at some point, these big dirt blocks on the mountains came, and many other things came as well. So we had many more possibilities, and to fit every idea in was leading into a huge map, and it was a big task to fit everything in here. We made a big Google Doc where we put all our parts in that we built, and then we had to basically put them together in a way that it then works with the space. And we were extremely compact here in some parts. Especially in Valley, there are so many off-road things that you need. And that means every little piece of off-road we had to use, kind of. So we couldn't waste that. We had to be really creative with our space. Yeah, and the whole map ends then here on the mountain. You climb up the mountain on several parts here in the end. It's a very cool map. It is on YouTube if you want to see it. There was a big competition who will be the first finisher on this. I uploaded that to YouTube. There's also a trailer on YouTube.
I have the full one as well.
Yeah, Lars has the full run.
GPS one.
Like a sector run.
Yeah.
That only takes an hour then or something. That's actually doable to watch.
I looked at that earlier and I just kept watching, and I watched it for like half an hour again. Can't stop watching.
Yeah. So now actually the question for me, what are the YouTube comments? Not weird, Ryulu thought that was really fast considering his normal speed was minus 200%.
Yeah, most is obviously about Riolu. Obviously. About that dig at Riolu. I mean, he had to, but yeah. Expect that. With that valley parkour, I might do that as like a subcore or something. Maybe then people would be more interested. I'm not sure. If I would just and otherwise he would just say, yeah, you do it now, and then I don't know, it would be less interesting maybe. Maybe we could even do that together. That would be difficult.